What's the good word, y'all? DKB here. So, the question of the day: do the New York Jets have a Super Bowl caliber defense? I had a lot of actual opinions just based off the eye test and things I've seen, reading stat sheets and all this other stuff of what a Super Bowl defense was. And I can start this whole conversation off by saying, when it comes to the statistics of everything, there's been a lot of different analysis that I looked at and charts and all of these other things. There's not many strong correlations in what makes a Super Bowl defense. And for that matter, even if we feel like it's a Super Bowl caliber defense, that meaning you're more likely to win the Super Bowl. And the phrase defense wins championships is something that's been stuck with me for the longest. Based on what I've seen, technically speaking, yes, if you have a strong defensive team, you're more apt to win, especially in the bigger stages, things, the playoffs and the Super Bowls. And the thought processes behind it, when I've seen a lot of these stats, is more so an unhidden stat. There's no real true way to measure this. But a defense, let's say you have playmakers all throughout the defensive line, the linebacker unit, cornerbacks, safeties. Um, you can withstand a handful of players, even let's say two or three guys do not play the way they've been playing all playoffs and the regular season. They fumbled things a bit here. The defense as a whole can withstand a couple of those performances. Whereas if your quarterback is off for that game, or your star wide receiver, your running back just can't find any lanes as normal, you generally fall to the wayside, and I think that makes a lot of sense from that perspective. But with all of that said, there were a handful of strong correlations, or at least strong enough statistics that you can look at and say, hey, if you're winning in these categories, you have a very great chance of having a defense that travels well, as we've heard with the New York Jets, among a bunch of other teams, and being able to go out there and actually get a couple wins. So some of those categories, from in this is in general speaking, there's a few outliers and things like that, but in general, uh teams that have won or made the Super Bowl the last 10 years or so, they've been ranked in the top 15 in opponent completion percentage allowed. They've ranked top 10 in opponent rushing yards allowed. They've ranked top 15 in takeaways per game. And then every Super Bowl champion, essentially in the last decade, has generally boasted a top 10 scoring defense. So those are generally the four things that we're looking at. Now, where do the Jets stack up currently in regards to those metrics? Opponent completion percentage, we're ranked 8th. Shouldn't be a surprise that we're a top 10 defense. I'm actually surprised it's not a little bit higher, but we're allowing 62.5% of opponents' passes to be completed. You would imagine that a lot of that is against the linebackers and, the splash plays against the safeties. Opponent rushing yards allowed, we're 13th. We've allowed 1,352 yards, or 112.7 per game. A huge increase from what we've seen the year prior. We were absolutely obliterated almost every single game, and it seemed like people were able to do at will whatever they wanted with any running back they wanted. And so it was nice to see, especially considering we walked into the season with some concerns. Quinnen Williams, we knew, should still be somewhat of a dominant force in that area. But, Sheldon Rankins, terrible season. We still had Nathan Shepard. We bring on Solomon Thomas. None of these guys excel in this area. And we've been able to do an absolutely tremendous job of stopping opponents within the tackles for the most part. And we know the edge presence has definitely diminished a lot of what people can do trying to rush outside of the tackle. So I definitely expect that number to climb. We've seen some strong performances from CJ and Quan when he's turned up, and when Quincy Williams pieces everything together, you see a lot of players get blown up in that 3 to 4 yard range. And then in terms of takeaways per game, we are ranked 12th. 1.3 per game. A lot of the teams are going to be within a general range of 2.1 to 1.3. I think I've seen as low as 1.1 for a few people. So it's not a very wow statistic to look at, but you've seen certain instances of games where our pass rush got home. Sauce and DJ Reed did their thing along with Michael Carter II. teams had to try to go over the top to, make up for bad situations. And we seen Joyner come away with a bunch of balls. We seen DJ Reed and Sauce force a couple of plays. CJ Mosley's even gotten in on one. We're forcing a lot of fumbles. That's one of our craziest stats. I think we forced 15 fumbles. We've only recovered 3. When you consider those to be 50-50 situations, it's pretty wild that we've only came away with 3 of those recovered. But irregardless. And then in terms of our final stats, scoring defense, we're ranked 6th, 18.6 per game. Now, with all of this said, you feel these statistics for the most part. You can feel the instances of dominance in the run game, but you also get those I can't even call them one-offs, but you get those consistent enough plays where players are breaking off chunk yardage left and right. Think both of the Patriots games, for example, from recent memory, and then we even seen it with the Vikings, and it was generally up the middle when it occurred. So Quentin Williams taking a break, having a couple plays off, and then we see the Solomon Thomas, Sheldon Rankins tandem, or Nathan Shepard coming in. And again, going back to what I said, these aren't the strongest guys in this area by far. Now, what generally surprised me was when I was thinking of a Super Bowl defense, the imagery of just having a top 5 unit in pretty much all key categories was kind of ingrained in my head. But the fact is, that's very much so not the case. Top 15, top 10, top 15. These are like very generous rankings. But one of the things that interested me the most is I tried to do as much research as possible. When you go back and take a look at the DVOA rankings, and I know a lot of people, after, taking a look at your favorite podcasters and analysts and all these things, generally this is regarded as one of the more precise measurements in how a team is performing, because it takes things on a play-by-play basis, tries to equalize things across the board and give you a true number, ranking, etc., on how a team is doing. I didn't get a chance manually to do this, so I had to rely a little bit on what was already done. But at least in the last 12 years or so, I don't have the most recent two, so this is about from 2020 to 2011. Teams defensively, DVOA ranked. We had the 2013 Seahawks that were first, the 2020 Bucks that were 5th, 2019 Chiefs were 14th, 2016 Patriots were 16th, the 2017 Eagles were 5th, 2014 Patriots were 12th, the 2015 Broncos were first, and then 2018 Pats 19th, 2012 Ravens 19th, 2011 Giants ranked 21st. So more often than not, you're definitely seeing these teams that won are in that upper top 10 area of DVOA rankings. Looking at the rankings doesn't really say, I feel like it doesn't build the full picture. So for those that don't know, when you take a look at the defense DVOA, you want to look for a negative number in terms of how well a team is performing. The 2013 Seahawks were by far and away one of the best teams, just narrowly missing out from the 2015 Broncos. Out of those 10 years or so, from 2020 to 2011, 8 of those teams had a negative DVOA, and 4 of them were in the top 10. The rest of them, 14th, 12th, and 16th, so just kind of narrowly missing out of that top 15 mark. For conversation's sake, currently the Jets are ranked 5th when it comes to DVOA. So by all statistical categories, we're right there. We're right there in terms of truly having a Super Bowl defense, if you absolutely want to go by some of these measurements. And as strong as we can tell what makes up a true Super Bowl defense, but I try to have multiple layers of context to it, right? So when you take a look at the game film, even when you're just watching highlights, it definitely passes the eye test to me of us immediately looking like an above average to borderline elite defense. Secondly, statistically, as we just reviewed, we are definitely well in the fold in some categories and just narrowly missing in others. And there's a host of other categories you can look at. and see that we're ranked top 10 there. Um, and then when you just go comparison sake and you want to actually break down game fields, so you have the generic view, you have the actual expert view, and every analyst, every fan, even a lot of the critics will tell you this defense is absolutely elite, and we travel well. We can go up against anybody. It's a strong reason and an indicator why I no longer fear any of the quarterbacks that we're going to face. At least as in terms of the ones that aren't generally mobile quarterbacks, and the wide receiver weapons. I'm more so concerned about the running back room that we're going to face and the tight ends, because let's face it, our linebacker unit and the safeties are still the biggest concerns on this defense. And if there is any general fallback in play from the defensive line or the cornerback room, which generally hasn't been the case, things can become bad. And we've seen the team do absolutely elite performances for 59, even a full 60 minutes. And I would reference the Patriots game as one of them. And we've seen the offense not hold up their end of the bargain. We still ultimately end up losing. So those days look like they're behind us. But I would love to know your guys' thoughts. What do you think about how close we are to a Super Bowl championship style team? Um, is there something we're absolutely missing? Is it more all pro caliber players? Do we just need a significant upgrade in a certain area? But let me know. I mean, I definitely understand we're not the 2013 Seahawks with the Legion of Boom. We're definitely not the 2015 Broncos. But I would argue we're definitely a lot better than the Bucks and the Chiefs and some of these Patriots teams that we've seen win over the last 7 years. But I'm just one guy, subjective opinion of a Jets fan. So again, let me know what your guys' thoughts are, and I'll catch you again. Peace.